This is the Agoro Carbon Farming Podcast. Agoro Carbon Alliance is taking action on a global scale to reverse the effects of climate change by decarbonizing farming and restoring carbon to the world's soil. On this podcast, we're going to explore carbon farming from the soil to the atmosphere and how it affects everyone in between. To learn more, visit us at agorocarbonalliance.com. Welcome to another edition of the Carbon Farming Podcast. My name is Scott Warr, and we are joined by a couple guests today that are going to help us kind of understand the synergy between a customer success agronomist at Agoro and a rancher. And boy, we're super excited to have first Steve Rapp. He grew up in northern Texas, right on the Oklahoma border in a community called Farmers Valley in Wilbarger. Is that right? Wilbarger
Yes, sir.
County?
That's right, Scott.
Steve has a master's in meat science and a doctor of veterinary medicine from Texas A&M. He's been a mixed animal practitioner. I'm going to ask you what that means here in a minute, but he was a mixed animal practitioner for 47 years. Eventually sold his practice to his partners, and now he has taken over his family farm, his family ranch, and has been doing that for years. So, Steve, first of all, what is a mixed animal practitioner? My grandfather was a veterinarian, and I think he may have been a mixed animal practitioner. He did large animal, and he also did household animals like your pet cat and stuff, but mostly large animal. What does that mean?
I think it really goes back to a book we've probably all heard of, it, All Creatures Great and Small. So my joke is, in my latter years, I did just whatever fit through the front door.
How big was the door, Steve?
I actually worked on an elephant at one point.
Wow.
And had a call to a circus, and I actually thought it was a classmate that was joking with me. And the guy said, "I'm for real, I'm the trainer." So, yeah, it's been an interesting career to work on all species.
What a great career that is. Tell us about the family farm that you grew up on and you eventually took over after your retirement from veterinary practice.
I'll be glad to. My grandfather bought this farm in 1922.
Wow.
We just celebrated 100 years of a family member farming the farm, and I went to an award ceremony in Austin for that. But the first 10 years, my grandfather plowed this farm with mules.
Wow.
I actually have a picture of 76 mules in a cotton field. There's a situation where neighbors came over to help. But this evolved through the years to where we had large four-wheel drive tractors and the ability to plow deep and wide. And we basically plowed the land to death and watched the sand blow. So, not good. So, in my scope was no-till and a transition from commodities to native grasses and coastal Bermuda sprigging and having a cattle operation. And that was something I was considering when I started reading about carbon farming and carbon sequestration. My farm is a general 1 to 3% slope. For these 100 years, we suffered from sheet erosion. So
I don't know if I know that term. What is sheet erosion?
You don't tend to just see gullies and trenches of washed soil. It'll just be in a level plain. And so Lord knows how many inches of topsoil we lost through those years of plowing and heavy rains and sheet erosion. So we don't just get gullies. We just basically get the whole field and flat with that gentle slope.
Interesting. So years ago, it was mostly field crops and cotton and that sort of thing. And now you've kind of evolved the farm into a cattle ranch. Is that correct?
My mother died in 2007, and that's when I took over. And we were still farming cotton and wheat. And I added canola as a rotation crop. Through the years, we had planted guar as a legume and tried to build up soil. But basically, we were farmers, and we drug hot wire around and had cattle, but we didn't have permanent fences. So we would always graze wheat pastures and use cattle as part of our operation. But we were basically farmers.
Excellent. Well, what a great tradition and heritage you have. I'm curious. After 100 years of farming the same land, this newfangled term comes up: carbon farming or carbon sequestration. What made you think, hey, maybe I should look into that? It seems like for 100 years things have been going pretty well. Why change?
Well, input costs got so high that we're looking for anything that might be another source of revenue to, get our bottom line. And back in mid 2020, I started seeing articles, maybe every third farm magazine or cattleman, I would see something about carbon farming. And there were a lot of holes in that understanding, but I started to cut out articles about it. And for 2 years, before I met Agoro and Shawntel, I read and read and read everything I could, thinking this could be another source of revenue. And so I'd pretty done a lot of homework, but I certainly had lots of questions about what the Carbon Alliance companies were going to require of us.
And how did you finally meet up with Agoro? What piqued your interest with that company specifically?
Well, I had done internet searches to find out what companies were out there, and I, just waiting for somebody to come along. I even contacted a couple of them, and no, we're not in your area. We're up in the Corn Belt and this kind of thing. And so, just being thinking about transitioning to grass and cattle, I just wasn't finding anybody in our area. Well, then my friend Bobby knew I had been reading a lot about this, and so kind of through the back door, we found out that Agoro was going to be coming to wine and dine and meet some of us farmers and ranchers, and he told me about it, and so wow, I just latched on to that Agoro, and I started researching about Agoro before finally Shawntel contacted me.
And Shawntel is the grower success agronomist with Agoro. Shawntel, tell us about your first meeting with Steve. How did that go?
Well, we were right there at his dinner table in Chillicothe, and we also met with that gentleman he's talking about, Bobby, good friend of Steve's, who's also enrolled in our program. But it was an interesting meeting because a lot of times people have misconceptions about what a carbon market is and what we do, how much we pay, when we pay, stuff like that. And Bobby and Steve had a lot of questions, and we sat there, and Steve was a great help with the knowledge that he obviously has, with the research that he has done. He's a lot of help in trying to also get other people understanding and putting it in terms that other people can understand a lot of times, or other ranchers particularly. So I don't know, Steve, we sat there 2, 3, maybe 4 hours. We sat there a long time, and we chatted about the entire program, about the carbon market, what we are doing. Because like Steve was saying, we were one of the first ones to come in for ranch ground, pasture land. So there was just a lot of, what can we do? What can't we do? What level of involvement you're going to have on the farm, talking about me. And we just, man, Steve, we sat there, we chatted for hours, didn't we?
Oh, it was 3+ hours.
Yeah. And it was a great meeting. Right off the bat, I knew Steve was going to be great to work with. Bobby's great to work with as well. They're kind of a matched pair. So whenever I see Steve, I also see Bobby. So it's hard to talk about Steve without Bobby. But it was a great meeting. And from there, Steve has just been very accommodating with everything we've asked him to do, and even going above and beyond what we ask.
Yeah, let's give the audience a little bit of background on you, Shawntel. You also come from a farming background in Northeast Oklahoma, and you have a master's in plant and soil science from Oklahoma State University. I can't remember, Steve, does Texas A&M and Oklahoma State, do they have a rivalry? Were you turned off because of her degree and where she got it?
Not at all. Not at all. Having grown up on the Oklahoma border, I have always been a fan of Oklahoma playing Texas. I pull for Oklahoma because I'm an Aggie. So,
Oh,
but
good.
anyway, no rivalry there at all.
How important to you, Steve, is that Shawntel's background in farming and plant and soil science?
Oh, I think it's imperative and so helpful to her because of who she's dealing with. I mean, we're just good old boys, me and Bobby, and we like to connect with somebody who has that down to earth experiences and everything. But if she was a school teacher trying to transition over to this and hadn't had the experiences like we had growing up, I don't think it would make as quick a connection as we did.
I think Shawntel probably has your best interest in her heart and wants to make sure, like her, she knows what the day-to-day challenges are for a farmer and rancher, and I think that probably helps out quite a bit. So tell us, after the first meeting, Steve, were you both feet in? Did you still have questions? Where did it go from there?
Well, I had a lot of holes in my understanding about what a contract might be, and then having read a lot, well, of course, you're already picking up articles where you need to get a lawyer and all this kind of stuff to review all these contracts and everything. But I really appreciated that Shawntel was able to bring what seemed like very complex wording on things I had read before, that it became simple and a little easier to understand. And so, yeah, I was really wanting this to work, and so I felt like all my holes and my questions and all got answered that day in that 3-hour meeting at the dinner table.
Did the practice changes that Agoro and Shawntel were recommending, were they in harmony with your philosophy as a rancher? Were they hard to adopt?
And no, because I already was wanting and reading about no-till and going to native grasses and getting back to the prairie type of approach on my soil to build soil health and not realizing what contributing factor organic matter and carbon has to soil health. I just had soil health in my mind. As I've moved along in my couple of years here with Agoro and read more and more, sequestering carbon is synonymous with organic matter, which is synonymous with soil health. And so all three of those kind of become a triangle that help each other. And it was something I wanted to do. I just had that little step up to transition and that desire based on their requirements to make that transition, just something I had thought about. And it was easy to make a move. And then the financial blood transfusion helped with buying some native grass seed, which are not cheap.
Let's talk about that a little bit more, Shawntel. After meeting with Steve for 3+ hours, what did you see with his ranch? What opportunities did you see for him, and what did you recommend? What was the prescription?
Yeah, so they usually get tailored per person, right? So on Steve's ranch, obviously the first thing I noticed was how knowledgeable he was about what's already, he already had an idea of what he's doing. He already understood, what he just explained there with soil health, and he already understood how to sequester carbon. So really, Steve does above and beyond what we require per our contract. So it's with Steve, it was quite interesting because he's also applying some manure and doing some composting of manure. He also has a mix of Bermuda grass and native pastures, so it's a little bit different on the different fields. So really the prescription wasn't as in-depth as it sometimes is, because Steve already had a really good concept going. And really what the main thing that I think I provide Steve, and he may have a different opinion here, is just the connection. Like, at what time what's going to be the end result of this thing, and trying to help him through the process. So he already had a good idea of what's going to work for the field and the soil. So in terms of the agronomy side of things, Steve was very simple. On his ranch, it's just about collecting the data, seeing what will work, answering the questions that he has in between what his idea is and what later on in the contract our requirements are, or what how do we get the most out of soil sampling, or how do we do and enhance what he's already doing. So very, very simple, no real script for him. He already had a very good idea, with the mix of native pasture and Bermuda grass, and the way he's rotating his cows and all of that. He was up on it. Don't let him be bashful here. He already knew a lot of stuff before I came in. It's just really around the carbon market in general, and how to get there.
I have something I want to add here that I'm thinking, because I appreciate those compliments and comments, but after I got into Agoro, I was already in the process of planning 155 acres of native grass seeding, which is very challenging and takes 3 years for some of those seeds to germinate. So I got baptized by immersion on that, because I spread my seed by broadcasting. And so then I come in there and I harrowed it to increase soil contact. First mistake, but it certainly reinforced what no-till can mean for you. We had 40 plus days after I harrowed that field and 155 acres of native grass, no rain, record-breaking consecutive days of 30 plus mile an hour winds. And I saw sandstorms like I had not seen since I was a kid growing up on that farm. And I'm like, help me, Jesus. I seriously went by there one day and the sand was blowing so bad that I called my wife on the phone and I said, I'm not going by the Farmers Valley farm anymore. I can't look at this. I actually called 2 neighbors and offered to come help them clean house, because I knew my sand was going. I know how it is. You could write your name in the kitchen table when I was a kid after a sandstorm. So this requirement for no-till was just a no-brainer after that.
What a great story, Steve. It sounds like you're a steward of the land, that you want to improve upon the land and the soil structure. And it sounds like this a relationship that you have with Agoro is helping you build that soil organic matter, build soil health, and add an additional revenue stream. How much work is it, additional work is it, to sign up with Agoro and do the soil sampling and the testing and all the requirements that are necessary to partner with Agoro? Is that a huge leap for you, or is it pretty easy?
Not a big bump in the road at all, because you guys provide the soil sampling for the carbon samples, which is quite extensive. I just couldn't even believe how many samples were taken on the Farmers Valley farm. My soil tests have to do with nitrogen, phosphorus, organic matter, watching that grow, and what fertilizer I need to apply. But I can't imagine what Agoro's spending for those carbon samples. I actually timed it where I was up there to go around with the gentleman that was doing the carbon testing and firing with the hydraulic press down in to get 18 inches of soil to find out how much carbon I have and get my baseline. So honestly, everything's been pretty easy and straightforward, and things I would have wished I could do anyway.
Can you talk a little bit about the data requirements, Steve? I know I come down there a couple times the year. We sit at your table again. Can you just elaborate a little bit more on the requirement there, and if that's been a pain for you or not?
Well, I guess in my case, because I'm kind of a bookkeeping freak, Shawntel, I'll send her data and I will start out with TMI, but here it is. But basically, initially, I provided the seed, the cost of the seed, the invoices for seed purchased, for coastal sprigging that I did, those invoices, and fertilizer cost. I've done some cross fencing, and I've even sent her the cost and the information about cross fences that I've made for rotational grazing, but I'm not sure those were required. Shawntel, right?
Yeah, so those, like I said, Steve goes above and beyond as far as the data too. We do require some proof that the practices have been done. We could do that through email. I've also picked it up in person. So just a little bit more context there. There is a data requirement. Steve has provided everything very quickly in a timely fashion, and then that also helps with payments and getting payments done in a timely fashion as well. So I always enjoy our visits, Steve. So it's my job, one of my favorite parts of my job. So.
Steve, tell us about, remind me, how long have you been on the program and how are things going so far?
Well, I signed up, I think the beginning was January of 2022. Would that be right, Shawntel? I think we met at the end of December of 21, and then I got my contract signed and we moved into the program in 22.
And how's it going so far? What do you see so far? And the better question, what do you see as the future with this relationship?
Oh, I can already see, not that I wasn't a believer in rotational grazing, but, with some financial, like I called it a transfusion, it helps you be more positive about doing some things like cross fencing. And I don't like to do anything like that unless I do it right. So I have a dairyman that leases 200 acres of one of my places. And we had run the whole 200 acres that he would have 2-year-old heifers. And this year I built a cross fence during the winter. And so this spring and summer, we rotated every 3 weeks. We moved those cattle from 100 acres to the other 100. And I've never had, as my conservation colleagues that I consult with talk about, the depth of a Dr. Pepper can. You want to leave your grass the depth of a Dr. Pepper can. I have done that this summer with that rotational grazing on that 200 acres, even in spite of the drought that we've had. And I know my dairyman that leases that portion of the farm commented, I can't imagine if we had a normal year what it would have been. He said,
Wow.
I probably would have been able to run 30 or 40 more heifers.
Just a quick comment. I mean, there's a lot of Texas references in there, Steve, with the Dr. Pepper can and everything. I think that's a very Texan thing.
Yes.
But a lot of times, he touched on the drought, and a lot of times people in Texas are skeptical on whether rotational grazing works in Texas because of the drought risk. But I think it really enhances your land and your grass. And rotational grazing can mean a lot of different things. It doesn't necessarily have to be mowing it down to the ground and then moving it every 3 weeks or every 2 weeks or every month. It can be really broad in terms of what kind of grass that you have growing, what moisture regime you are in. Those things can be really customized per ranch. And obviously Steve's doing a fantastic job, but I think it's just a testament to show in a drought year, rotational grazing can decrease risk. And a lot of times people look at it as increasing risk in a drought. But I think our ranchers are showing that the opposite is true. You're decreasing your risk in a drought by rotationally grazing and allowing that grass to recover before you put more cows on it to graze.
Good point, Shawntel. Hey, as we finish up here, Steve, I'm curious. As a veterinarian, does that make you a better rancher and farmer to have that background?
Well, maybe it gives you more to worry about. Sometimes ignorance can be bliss, but I'd like to think so. Yes, and all. I think that those two can go hand in hand, and all. But my friend Bobby is always jokes that how much I know, but also the school of hard knocks and experiences make me consult with him probably as much or more than he consults with me, and we help each other.
That's great. Well, Steve, thank you very much.
I got one thing I want to say. Scott made the comment that I seem to be a good steward, and that meant a lot to me. Back when I was probably in junior high, we drove by our neighbor's farm just to our west, and it was washing, and it washed from big rain, and it was just a mess. It was going to take 2 times in the field to repair that. And I made the comment to my father, who worked very hard. He was a member of the Conservation Board in Wilbarger County. I made this comment about our neighbor, and my father just very politely said, yes, our neighbor is not being a good steward right now. And he gave Bible reference about that. And that really impacted me to this day, that for you to say you're a good steward meant a lot to me, because I went right back to that comment my father made. And thank you very much.
Well, that's what we're here for, right? I think farmers are the true environmentalists. They're the ones that are caring for this land. They care more about it than anyone, and probably take care of it better than anyone, especially if they have good advisors like you have Bobby, or you have Shawntel. You have your agronomist and your other advisors. I think we work together as a community to make good decisions so that we can be around for another 100 years, right, Steve?
Yes, sir. I hope that's my grandson and so on are there. We're working to be sustainable, and Shawntel and Agoro is helping us do that. That's a big buzzword in the consumer.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add, having growers like Steve and Bobby and really a lot of my other growers, they give me just as much knowledge as what I try to give them as well. I learn every day on the job that I'm with one of these farmers and ranchers. I'm learning. I appreciate that and their takes, because a lot of times they're wiser than me for sure, and they've seen a lot more stuff than I have in my life. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate the knowledge that Steve's able to pass on to. Because that is only making me a better person, better steward of the land as well, better agronomist. So I appreciate that, Steve.
Great.
We appreciate you, Shawntel, very much.
Shawntel, if someone is listening to this episode and thinking, it's time, I need to find out more, it's time, where can they go? How can they find out more information?
They can go to our website. They can contact us through there. They can contact your local rep. Also, any of our social medias, they're managed as well. Really, any way that you want to contact us and you see our name, or you see a neighbor that you see our truck pulling into, and we're just sitting there talking to our neighbor, they all know how to get a hold of us. So it's not as hard anymore to get a hold of an Agoro rep, because we are out in the fields, and I mean, our website is a big one.
Good. And that's agorocarbon.com. Is that correct?
Yeah.
We'll have that in the show notes as well. I'm sure the marketing team will make sure that that's there. Well, Steve, thank you so much for your time today. It was a pleasant conversation. I was glad to know that Texas, North Texas especially, is being taken care of. Shawntel, thanks for your wisdom and helping us dispel some of maybe the apprehension that someone may have if they're thinking about jumping on this carbon marketplace. So thank you both, and visit agorocarbon.com. You've been listening to the Agoro Carbon Farming Podcast, where we bring you knowledge on how to sustainably and profitably transform farming through carbon cropping. To learn more about how you can become a partner, visit us at agorocarbonalliance.com or follow us on our many social media channels: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn.